कबीर सुनो भाई साधो, कहत कबीर सुनो भाई साधो, अरे कहत कबीर सुनो भाई साधो, कहत कबीर सुनो भाई साधो। साहब मिले सबूरी में, अरे साहब मिले सबूरी में, मन लागो यार फकीरी में, मन लागो।
Because you are asking this question. We think that we are lost. Equally, we think that we are not lost. The same place from where the thought, the perception of being lost or not lost arises. That place is the same place from where this question arises. There sits someone who firstly thinks himself to be so knowledgeable that he can pass a judgment upon his situation. He thinks that he knows who he is and what is his situation, his location. He declares, he announces. Sometimes he says, I'm fine. Sometimes he says, I'm not fine. Sometimes he says, I'm lost. Sometimes he says, no, I'm home. And that same one then asks, where is home? How am I home? Am I lost? Am I not lost? Are any of these judgments, these announcements, or these questions valid in absence of mental activity? You woke up this morning. Before waking up into this particular state of consciousness, were you asking this question? Anybody here who asks in his or her sleep, what is meant by being lost? How does one reach home? Are any of these questions relevant then? Is even the deepest spiritual inquiry relevant in a moment of relaxation? When you are really all right, do you bother yourself with these questions? Now, let me invert the whole thing. We say that we are not lost, hence we are asking what is meant by not being lost, or we are lost, hence we are asking why we are lost. Let me assert that we feel lost because we ask the way to home. It is not the situation that comes first. It is not the situation that gives birth to the question. Rather, it is the question that gives rise to an assumed situation. I'll repeat this. By asking a question which is based on a supposition, I am validating the supposition. It is like asking, were you ill again yesterday? If I ask you, were you ill again yesterday? Is this a question or is this a statement of great assumption being taken as a fact? I'll repeat it. I ask you, were you ill again yesterday? Do you see the assumption explicit in the question? What is the assumption?
Often gets sick.
That you are someone who often falls ill. So you have defined yourself. You have given yourself an identity. So it is in fact an assertion rather than a question. Similarly, when you ask, how do I reach home? Do you see the assumption, the direct assumption contained in the question? What is the assumption? I have to reach home, I am lost. Equally, when you say, I am home, do you see an assumption contained here? What is the assumption? There is something called home, and there is something called me, who can sometimes stray away from the home. Do you see that our questions are not questions at all? They are rather declarative judgments. But we ask as if we want to know. We do not ask because we want to know. We ask because we want to display that we already know. It is like asking someone, why are you so foolish? Now, do you want to know? Or are you asserting that you know? Someone asks, why are you so foolish? Is it a statement of simple, innocent, honest inquiry? The ego already knows, pretends that it knows, must feel that it knows. And then to bolster that sense of being knowledgeable, it asks something. Now that something does not mean anything. In fact, if that question is answered, tell me what would happen if you ask me, sir, why are you so foolish? And I give you any answer. What would that answer mean? You ask me,
Justification.
it would be a validation of your question. You ask me, sir, why are you so foolish? And I respond with something. It would simply validate the hidden assumption in your question. Similarly, if you ask me, why am I lost? Why have I come thus far from home? If I answer anything, I'll be buying your argument. I don't want to buy your argument. I simply don't subscribe to any viewpoint that you have about yourself. And my advice is, neither do you need to subscribe to your own opinions. If there is one thing that a man should be wary of, it is his own opinions, especially about himself. Are you lost? You seriously think you are lost? What makes you feel that you are lost?
Not among the regular ones. No. Something. The normal is not appealing.
Or is it so that the world does not appeal to you because you already feel that you are lost? Are we really able to look at the cause as the cause and the effect as the effect? Or are we conflating the two?
It's all about ego.
An established doctor comes to you, looks at you and says, mate, 3 months more. And you know, he does something which makes you feel that he is genuinely checking you up. And then he says, mate, all you have is 3 months more. He says this and goes away. Now you come out and you look at the world. How would the world look to you? How would the world appear to you? The world would appear disappointing. You would look at the world and feel totally disillusioned. The world has lost all its charm, all its appeal. Now, what comes first? Your assumption about yourself or the way the world appears to you? I'm again asking you, what comes first? Your self concept or the way the world appears to you?
Planning mind. Planning about future is what comes.
If we can get rid of what we think ourselves to be, would we still be left with most of that which bothers us? Are all our problems not mostly thoughts? Especially problems that relate to self concept, self inquiry, one's perception of the world. Does it not happen that we relate the happenings as we see them in our particular modes of consciousness to a thought about, a description of who we are? The world says you are fine, and we take it in so deeply that it becomes our self-description. Some guru, some scripture tells us that the great goal of life is God realization or liberation or enlightenment. And we take it in so deeply that our present situation starts appearing horrible to us. We say, oh, we have just been told that unless we have met God, realized God, life is futile. And I haven't realized God. So my life is futile. Now, is life futile? Did that come first? Or did your assumption come first?
Maybe is what it is. It's the assumption. This is what is right to do. This is what is right. Do as we cannot see out of that box. No matter how hard we try to fit into it, it is not. Even though you feel sometimes, okay, I have to do this, this is what is right for me. When you try to do it, it doesn't happen. And then you start, why it doesn't happen? I think this is the right thing. I should do this. This will give me this. And fully I am trying to do. But at the right moment, it doesn't happen. Then I reason, okay, maybe because of this or this or this or this or this, it will not happen. This.
Why must something happen? Why must something happen? Is the universe obliged to follow your principles and expectations?
It does.
If it does, it only does so to severely disappoint you later. I have an infinite number of fingers. See? 1, yes. 2, yes. 3, yes. 4, yes. 5, yes. And by the time I reach the 5th, I'm all swelled up. Then 6th. Huh? So 5 times your expectations have been met.
Yes.
The 6th time they will be belied. And it's better that the disillusionment comes early. With every instance where you feel that the universe has subscribed to your expectations, you are only raising yourself higher and higher to a point from where the fall would hurt more and more. If it has ever happened that the fact has coincided with your expectations, it is just that, a coincidence. Do not think that the universe has some especially soft corner for you. No 6th finger. Sorry. Things are what they are. Just what they are. Things become suffering when you think them to be different from what they are. They will remain what they are. You can keep crying or beating your chest. You will never grow a 6th finger. Oh, some people do. But never an 8th one. And never an 80th one. That would not happen.
If these an eighth finger, which is, I can understand, a metaphor, if it does not exist factually, how and why does mind conjure it up?
We can conjure up anything. The mind is very powerful in terms of imagining in the same dimension. 1 and one more step is 2, then 3, then 4, then 5. Why stop at 5? Why not move all the way to the 50th? Remember that the movement from 2 to 3 and 3 to 4 is not very different from the movement from 5 to 500. It is a movement in the same dimension. The mind can never be creative, but it can always be very imaginative. Do you see this? Increasing one number after the other is an act of gross imagination. It can happen so easily. Coming to the end of imagination is creativity. Now that is something a little beyond the mind. But to continue with the patterns that it has known all along is so easy for the mind. So, one man, then mind looks at someone else, compares on specific parameters, says better man, then a third man, an even better man, the fourth man, and even better man, the fifth man, the best man, and then the pinnacle of being the best, who is the most best man? God. Do you see how man comes to the whole idea, concept of enlightenment? Do you see how man raises God as some sort of an perfect image of himself? I am the one who has so many deficiencies that I perceive, and even that those deficiencies are perceived only when benchmarked against expectations. I wanted to do something. I had only 2 hands. So let me conjure a god that has 8 hands. Now his power to do is manifold. I wanted to reach somewhere, I could not. My legs are limited. So let me dream up a god who flies with the power of imagination, who flies with the speed of light, who is omnipresent, omnipotent. Everything that I cannot do, let me vest those powers in an imaginary godhead. It is just imagination in the same dimension. Don't we see that our gods are just inflated super images of ourselves? Don't we see how kids are fond of Superman-like characters? Kids are fond of Superman, adults are fond of super gods. So first you dream up a god and then you make your life miserable saying that you are yet to meet that god. That God exists only in your imagination, that enlightenment exists only in your imagination. Things are what they are, the universe is as it is right now, still perfect and complete. It has nowhere to go, it has no end, no goal to reach. Do you see this?
Just like I imagine God, I also imagine distance from something called a home.
Of course, of course.
And then again,
Of course. Home is God. Home is God. God is man's highest ambition. You want this, you want that, and ultimately you say, I want perfection. That you name as God.
But sir, the point is it all just an assumption? What if
Of course,
facts?
if it is being assumed, it is an assumption. If it is being imagined, it is an imagination. If it is being thought of, it is a thought. And our God is something that we think of. Is it not so? We think of liberation, we think of some final emancipation, we think of God. God does not occur to us. I again inquire you to see. God does not occur to us in our moments of relaxation or sleep. God is an idea to us. Is God not an idea to us? And it's all quite funny. First of all, we come up with an idea of how perfection should be. And then we look at ourselves and we say, oh, I'm not the way perfection looks. So there is something wrong with me. No, this is... Remember the poet Nagarjuna? He said, man is like the painter who paints horrible, a vile sketch, a demon on the wall, then looks at that painting and becomes horrified. Similarly, we are the ones who sketch an imaginary perfection, enlightenment or God, then we look at it and start feeling inferior or deficient. As long as God remains a product of man's imagination, God will be man's biggest and deepest suffering. If it is God who redeems, it is the idea of God that makes you suffer. Please let it be very clear to you. God is the highest freedom. The idea of God is the worst bondage.
So it is easily understandable that an ideal put front of the mind distances it from the real material, and then the struggle starts. But not, I mean, how do you convince the mind that
You can only convince the mind that whatever it does is foolish. And that too not in a violent way. What the mind does is foolish in the same way as the acrobatics of a monkey are foolish. There is a certain cuteness about them. The mind is foolish in the same way as a little child is foolish. There is a certain loveliness about that foolishness.
What to do when universe has answered all your prayers and you don't know what else to do?
And you should prepare for a great fall. Your next prayer is about to go unanswered.
Go unanswered.
The universe has nothing to do with your prayers.
It's like
It's about sunrise. And you pray that the sun must rise. And the sun rises. Has your prayer been answered? The universe has nothing to do with your prayers. It neither accepts them nor rejects them. You know what does it mean to pray? It means I am dissatisfied. How can you be dissatisfied without having an ideal? Tell me. And why should the universe conform to your ideals? Why? Do you ever pray without dissatisfaction? Tell me. And if you can pray without dissatisfaction, then that prayer will be answered. That prayer is already answered because you are now not praying for anything. You are just praying. But we never pray that way. We only pray in moments of fear or greed, only in moments of insecurity or gratification. Your motionless, thoughtless, expectationless silence is the only prayer possible. There is no other prayer. You verbalize it and you lose it. When you are feeling all right with yourself, then that noiseless silence is the expression of your gratitude. I am silent because there is nothing to be noisy about. That is your thank you. But if you name your noise as prayer, noise would still remain noise. And most of that which we call as prayer is just noise. Our temples and our churches are very noisy places. They are just like shopping malls. People go there to express their desires.